Welcome on the channel Nice Stories. Today we have intriguing story about
April 2022 is a month etched deeply into my memory, a time when my life took a turn I could never have anticipated. My wife and I had been together for 5 tumultuous years, filled with peaks of joy and valleys of despair. She battled with severe depression, a shadow that often loomed over our relationship. Despite the challenges, I loved her deeply and believed we could weather any storm together. We had been married for about 2 years when I discovered that she had been unfaithful. It wasn't just any affair, it was with an old high school friend of hers. The revelation came one evening when I noticed she had been unusually protective of her phone. Trusting my instincts, I confronted her gently, asking if there was anything she wanted to tell me. At first, she insisted it was nothing, just harmless texting. She assured me that they were merely catching up, reminiscing about old times. But something didn't sit right with me. The way she avoided eye contact, the slight tremble in her voice, it all pointed to more than just friendly banter. A few days later, the weight of the secret became too heavy for her to bear. With tears streaming down her face, she confessed that their relationship had become physical. The words hit me like a tidal wave, crashing over me and pulling me into an ocean of hurt and betrayal. In the immediate aftermath, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I couldn't stay in our home, the place now tainted with memories of deceit. In the heat of the moment, I hastily packed a small backpack with a few essentials and left to stay with my family. The drive there was a blur, my mind racing with questions. How long had this been going on? Was it something I did? Could our marriage survive this? Over the next 2 days, she called me incessantly, her voice filled with desperation and regret. She begged me to come back, to give us another chance. Her messages ranged from sorrowful apologies to frantic pleas. Part of me wanted to return, to hold her and tell her we could work through this. But another part was too wounded to face her. Eventually, I decided I needed more of my belongings, and truthfully, I wanted to check on our 2 dogs. They were like our children, and I worried about them amidst all the chaos. When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was thick with tension. She was there, her eyes red from crying, and the moment I stepped inside, the situation escalated. Words were exchanged, harsh, biting words that only deepened the rift between us. Feeling overwhelmed, I left again, unable to handle the toxicity that had enveloped our once happy home. Before leaving, I told her that it might be best if she stayed with her parents while we figured out our next steps. I didn't intend to kick her out permanently. I just thought some space might help us both. She agreed reluctantly, and I hoped that time apart would provide some clarity. The next day, I received a call that would shatter my world. Her brother phoned me, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's gone," he said. "We found her this morning." I couldn't comprehend his words at first. "What do you mean she's gone?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "She overdosed," he replied, his voice cracking, "on her medication." I felt the ground disappear beneath me. A numbness spread through my body as reality set in. She was gone. Forever. I couldn't breathe. Questions flooded my mind. How could this happen? Was there something I could have done? The guilt wrapped around me like a vice, squeezing tighter with each passing second. In the days that followed, everything was a haze. I attended her funeral, standing at the back as her family shot daggers at me with their eyes. They blamed me for her death, and in many ways, I blamed myself too. They believed that my request for space had pushed her over the edge. We had no children, which was a small mercy, but we did have our dogs. Not knowing what else to do, I asked my brother and his family to take them in. I couldn't bear to return to that house, filled with memories both beautiful and painful. Therapy became a lifeline for me. For the past year, I've been attending sessions regularly, trying to untangle the web of emotions that consumes me. The guilt and sadness are constant companions, shadows that follow me everywhere. I replay our last conversations over and over, wondering if I could have said something different, if I could have seen the signs. Her family cut all ties with me. They refused to speak to me at the funeral and ignored any attempts I made to reach out afterward. About a year after her death, I met someone new. It wasn't something I planned. It just happened. She was kind, understanding, and patient, everything I needed. We took things slowly, and eventually we decided to move in together. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of happiness, a hope that maybe I could rebuild my life. But the past doesn't let go easily. The trauma of those 2 years lingers, casting a shadow over my new relationship. I struggle with anxiety and depression, often doubting my self-worth. There are days when I can't shake the feeling that I don't deserve happiness, that moving on is a betrayal of her memory. My new partner tries her best to support me, but I know my lingering issues put a strain on our relationship. I worry that my inability to fully let go of the past might drive her away. I'm caught between wanting to honor what was and embracing what could be. I often think about the what-ifs. What if I had stayed that day instead of leaving in anger? What if I had recognized the depth of her depression sooner? She had always struggled, but perhaps I hadn't been as attentive as I should have been. These thoughts haunt me, circling endlessly in my mind. I still have so many unanswered questions, so many unresolved feelings. Closure feels elusive, like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I continue with therapy, hoping that one day I'll find peace with everything that has happened. Am I the antagonist for trying to move on and find happiness after enduring the worst period of my life? Part of me feels guilty for even considering it, as if my happiness is a betrayal. But another part knows that life must go on, that clinging to the past only prolongs the pain. Our dogs are thriving with my brother and his family. They send me pictures regularly, playing in the yard, snuggling on the couch with my nieces and nephews. It brings me comfort to know they're happy and well cared for. I wish things had ended differently. I wish I could have found a way to help her through her darkness, but I also know that I can't change the past. All I can do is keep moving forward, one day at a time, and hope that eventually the weight of guilt will lessen. Edit. Clarifications. I never intended to kick her out of our house permanently. I suggested she stay with her parents temporarily while we both took time to process what had happened and figure out our next steps. I thought some space might help us see things more clearly. I also didn't leave her entirely alone during that time. Her brother was with her for 2 of the 3 days before her death, offering support. I believe she had a strong support system around her, which eased my mind slightly. But looking back, perhaps I should have been more present, regardless of our personal conflicts.